trust is something that I don't think we don't really think about trust very often, but it's something that I think it directly affects us all the time. We feel and we act on the basis of trust, even though we don't really think about trust that often. And I'm hoping that maybe you will think about trust a little more after I say some things. You know, our actions and behaviors are affected by trust in people, in businesses, and even in our gadgets that we carry around. There's levels of trust everywhere, and it has a lot of influence on what we do. So, I mean, I had never spent that much time thinking about trust, but since I started working at Shopify, I started to think about this more. It's very central to our company culture, and so, you know, it just became a lot more relevant. So our CEO has often talked about this idea of a trust battery, and it's a battery is like a super simple concept that basically you all understand. You all have a phone, it has a battery, and it kind of sums up a very basic concept about having trust go up and down in a way that I think is useful. So the idea is obviously really simple, right? You meet a new person at school, at work, and you start with, you know, probably a fairly neutral level of trust in that person. You know, you don't know the person, so you might be inclined to say, oh, well, I'm not, you know, going to put a lot of trust in this person, and maybe that seems a bit negative, but we all kind of feel that way. On the other hand, you know, hopefully most of us can be optimistic and say, you know, we might want to put some trust in this person, but you know, what we really fundamentally need to do is gain some experience with people in order to trust. But I think fundamentally most people kind of want to, and when we get there, it's really good. So every time, you know, you work with somebody on a project at work, at school, wherever, you know, and that person kind of delivers what they're going to deliver, and they do what they say they're going to do, you know, it builds trust. You know, if they exceed your expectations, you know, if they show you a lot of respect and care, if they build you up as a person as part of doing what they're doing, you know, that builds a lot of trust. And you know, friendships and loves in life are built on, you know, high levels of trust just like that. So, you know, on the flip side, when people fail to deliver, when they don't do what they say, when they don't respect you, you lose trust. And, you know, no one is perfect. You know, people fail sometimes, and that's okay. But, you know, ups and downs, they're normal in a relationship, and trust goes up and down. And it's just about managing that and, you know, in order to make ourselves more successful. So that's why we talk about this idea of a battery instead of like some all or nothing thing, right? Charge is something you charge up and you drain it down, and as long as people work together to keep charging the battery, you can, you know, weather the problems that come around. So what's the value of this trust, right? Like, let's say you go to school, you know, you just have to get your work done, graduate. You get a job, you need to do your work, get paid. Like, why does trust kind of matter? Well, in the end, whenever you do anything that isn't just you, your success is totally dependent, or at least significantly dependent, on working with other people and getting things done together. You know, you can't complete your work without a good team in an office. You know, you need good management, you need a cooperative environment, and that's like, it's really key to your success. And so, you know, one of the reasons why our CEO talks about this is that he's trying to build a business that will live for a really long time and grow, and trust, you know, and an environment of trust is what we know is really needed to make that happen. So I've worked at a few different companies, and I've done a bunch of consulting in governments and companies, and I've come to look back on that experience and say, trust was actually really important in a lot of the things that I saw that were either right or wrong about companies. There were a lot of mistakes made, and I realized that trust was really key in all of that. So one time I worked at a company that was in the education software space, like I'm a software guy. And this company had what I would call a really patriarchal management style. This is like an anti-feminist company, let's say. There were a lot of problems in this company, just culturally, management-wise, all that kind of thing. One of the big things that was wrong in this company was the way in which they respected the workers in the company. So I'll give you like a really simple example here that may, all the people who worked in software, engineers and that kind of thing, got to dress sort of casually, right? Like jeans, t-shirts, it was all fine. But the rest of the people who worked in the company were totally not allowed to do that. Even as if like wearing jeans was gonna make it so that you couldn't get like your desk job done. Like they were sitting at a desk and like the pants mattered for some reason. When people got upset about this, their solution to that problem was to buy another building elsewhere in the city and move all the engineers over there so that people wouldn't complain. And they never really did anything to deal with the fact that they basically hadn't shown any of those people the respect that they deserved. You know, the president of the company had to approve like teeny tiny expenses, like tens of dollars, even though there were all sorts of managers that could do that kind of work. You know, and people just spent a lot of time worrying about their jobs and their positions, and they like didn't work very well together because they were kind of never felt trusted, and so they were always a little bit scared at work. They kind of hid, and it just was not a very cooperative environment at all. Now, where I work now at Shopify is kind of a bit of the opposite. We have a culture that is extremely open, extremely trusting, and very cooperative. You know, as I've watched the company grow just in the time that I've been there from a few hundred people to over 1,500 today, it's really clear that trust is like one of the most important things. When we hire people, we look at those people and say, can we trust the people as one of the most important reasons that we would hire them? And on the flip side, we'd say, would that person, would they be able to trust us? Like, do we believe that we can earn their trust? And that both of those things are really, really key in terms of whether somebody gets hired or not. You know, when I go around the company and I look for help, I'll go to somebody, maybe somebody I don't even know, and I'll ask them for help, and I almost always get that help. And you know, even if the person can't help me, they're sorry about that. They'll like try to find me help. And you know, that kind of open and honest you know, interactions, and the fact that those people cared, they will give me criticism and you know, up good and bad things. That whole thing builds up to a relationship where I've basically never really been disappointed in the people that I've worked with. And trust is really key to that. So, one of the really important benefits of a trusting relationship is the fact that it lets people take risks. It lets you think bigger. It lets you, you know, just be bolder in what you do, and it lets you dream bigger. And trust is the way in which you can feel safe while doing that. So companies these days talk a lot about this idea of embracing failure. It's something you may hear a lot. Companies in like the Silicon Valley and stuff like that, they talk about it all the time. Failure is like a thing you could do whole talks on, and I mean, we even heard one earlier today. But one of the things that allows you to do that is trust. Because when you embrace failure, what it really means is you're going to take really big risks, and you're going to fail. Like potentially a lot of the time. And it's really important that if you ask your employees to say, take a bunch of risks and like work on a really big project and accept that, hey, maybe it's not gonna work out at the end and we're just gonna cancel it. You've gotta feel safe that you're not gonna lose your job. The people that you work with, like they're not gonna hate you. And you need to know that, hey, next time you're gonna be able to take those risks again, and you have to feel safe. And trust is like the way in which that happens. So trust is not just about people, it's also about companies and the way that we interact with them. You know, when you make a decision to shop somewhere or spend money, trust is one of those things that you're using. You may not think about it, but it's there, right? Like, think about what happens when you get emotional about something. Like, let's say you get emotional about your cell phone service sucks, or something that many of you may have had, where you walk into a store and the clerk looks at you funny because you're a teenager, and you know, you get watched all through the store like they think you're gonna steal something just because of your age. That's a trust problem. And there's a lot of trust problems like that in businesses, and whole businesses can fail because they don't understand that they need to be trusting in the way in which they interact. So Shopify is a company that basically exists on trust. We have over 300,000 merchants. These are like companies filled with people sometimes. And we run like all the payments for those businesses. So like all the money that they make, it flows right through us between customers and them shipping orders and that kind of thing. And trust is key to that, because There's no way that we could have got where we got. There's no way we can continue to grow without them putting their trust every day that like we're not going to screw up their business. You know, we need to have really awesome software. We have to keep working, say, even when it's Black Friday and all the websites are failing, and you know, we have to keep running. If we screw up, and we do sometimes, we have to be honest about it. We go right to the customers. We say, look, we screwed up. Here's exactly what we did to fix it. Here's why we're not going to do that again. You know, we have to support the merchants. We have to provide ways for them to grow. And that basically demonstrates our trust in them directly to them. And in turn, they come around and they trust us with potentially all the money that they make. And you know, we're really humbled by that trust, and we've got to the point where we've run more than $20 billion in sales for those companies, and they trust us to do that. It's a lot of money. And it's kind of scary, and we work really hard to make sure that that works. So, to kind of conclude, I want to, say, what can you do to think about this idea of trust? Well, as you're all, starting to think about careers and your education in the future, be very mindful of this idea of trust, because it's all over the place. When you're picking a school, when you're interviewing for a job, if you're thinking about starting your own businesses, trust is a really important thing. If you're looking at a job and you want to work somewhere, try to find out about the company. Try to understand, like, what is the culture? How are they going to, what are they going to do to trust you? And do you think you can trust them? Because it's a really important way to know that that's a place that you could succeed and really do what you're able to do. And if you ever are thinking about starting a business, trust is so important. You've got to understand that you need to be able to trust your customers. You need to be able to trust the people that you work in. And, although trust is not even close to the only thing that you need to succeed in life, a lack of it, is potentially a really sure way to fail. And that's what I have. Thank you.